There is no doubt that the pharaohs are among the most prominent and important civilizations and peoples, to the extent that their antiquities are still a source of mystery so far. The state was known in ancient Egypt for law and regulation, and for this reason crimes and penalties were linked to moral, customary, and religious factors. In ancient Egypt, the crime was divided into crimes committed against society, such as murder, adultery, theft of property, individuals, crimes committed against the state, such as bribery, high treason, theft of public property, and finally crimes committed against religious institutions such as stealing cemeteries, temples, the death penalty in order to keep the pharaohs from violating their sanctity, and the difference in punishment between intentional killing and manslaughter, and the death penalty was a punishment for the perpetrator who committed murder, regardless of the social status of the perpetrator and the victim. And the pharaohs resorted in certain cases to psychological punishments, which he considered to be more severe, from execution. So the son who killed one of his parents was subjected to torture before being executed, by burning thorns, in the event that one of the parents killed his son or daughter. The murderer, the father or mother, would be forced to embrace the son or daughter's corpse, and bound them together 3 days, until they begin to break down, under heavy guard. As for the one who was killed by mistake, he could not enter his home before, to be cleansed from the guilt he committed, and present an offering, at the grave of the dead man, where it might happen, reconciled between the families of the perpetrator and the victim, and pay appropriate compensation. The pharaohs also made sure not to commit adultery, and considered it a religious crime, which the deceased disavowed, in his denial confessions, in front of the congregation of the gods, in the other world as stated in the text of the papyrus, Exodus, in the daytime known as the Book of the Dead. And the pharaohs made the punishment for adultery up to the death penalty in order to prevent moral escapism in society. The Egyptian texts talked about the punishment of an adulterous woman if she was married, as a legitimate right in the hands of the husband, who has the right to punish or forgive, for the wife and her partner, and he is free to refer the matter to the court. When doubting the wife's behavior without evidence, then the court will take up the case. It is noted that the punishment for men was lighter compared to that of women for the same crime, because the pharaohs believed that the crime occurred primarily on the woman's permission to do so, and the skin for a man, and the skin was limited to 1,000 lashes, and cutting the nose, for an adulterous woman, and he distinguished between the act of adultery and an act of indecent assault or rape, as it was determined that if adultery was committed by force or violence, the penalty was to cut off the reproductive organs, and if it had taken place without violence, the adulterous man would have flogged 1,000 lashes, and the adulterous woman would have cut her nose. The punishment for stealing the property of individuals is to pay a fine of up to twice or 3 times the stolen thing. As for the theft of state property, which amounted to a fine for the thief, it amounts to 180 times. The defendant pledged to return the stolen goods after his confession, and subjected to a penalty of beating 100 strokes by hand, and forcing him to swear an oath, otherwise he would be thrown into the river for crocodiles, and the punishment would be carried out in a public scene in front of people. As for the punishment for bribery, he was dismissed from the post and the person lowered to the degree of agricultural worker. Pharaohs were considered the crime of high treason, for the state and the king is the most heinous crime, and no punishment was imposed except for death, and in the event of treachery affecting the king, in a heinous manner, the traitor was not buried, until he was deprived of other life. The law reduced the punishment to the point of cutting hands or beating 100 blows if the exhumation of the deceased was not confirmed.